So excited to be sharing this with you today. I've been waiting for it, I think, weeks. Now's the time. Pull up a seat. Hey, it's Care. We're going to craft together today. I don't usually do this kind of stuff, so we'll see how it goes. If we like it. Oh, look, there's my candle way up close. If we like it, we'll do more. We'll see how this goes. Usually I don't have my candle lit. I always have one in here, for ambiance. But my room is generally scattered with papers. And that just seems silly to me to have a candle lit. But my desk is pristine. My desk is clean. There's nothing on it except the stuff we're going to work on right now. And here's the stuff we're working with. Can't wait to show you. Oh yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff. So I watched a video a while back. Her name is Robin. Last name begins with an M. I will link it below for sure because, as you know, I am all about giving credit where credit is due. I watched one of her videos and she's a very different junk journaler than I usually watch, in that the people I tend to watch are very craftsy, and she is an art teacher. So she comes at it from a completely different perspective. Number one, she's an art professor. It just harkens me back to being an art student myself, and in a professor at college myself. She has a very collegiate way of sharing her information, and I'm quite taken with her and her style. And she's very ambitious. She has a 52-week thing that she does every year. Holy smokes. And this year I think it's called Jelly Junkadori, I think. It's something about the Midori traveler style notebook / planner, but with jelly plate printing and junk journals. I mean, it's magnificent. And again, I think very ambitious, and I don't know, 52 weeks of anything is a long time. Back to the subject, please. I've only watched a couple of her videos, but this one, and I think it was the first one I watched, just absolutely struck me. And I went to town and I did quite a few things. Now, this is where I miss community ed and being in the same room with you. I wish you could feel these papers. It's a coffee dyed paper that I already had, and a stamped napkin Mod Podged over it. Now, these are not new. This is not rocket science. This is not earth-shattering or God, I've never seen that before. Mod Podge? Really? You don't say. Textured paper? Oh my God. Where have you been all my junk journal career? What's different for me, and what we're going to do together today, is how they come together and what you put in the middle. So it's not just paper and Mod Podge, it's paper and napkin and something sandwiched between, and then Mod Podged. And most of them, I do this to it because I like how that feels. It just adds one more layer of beautiful texture. And because they've been glued and Mod Podged and dried, it can take this kind of abuse and come back for more. Look how beautiful that would be in a journal. And it would just make such good, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's so awesome. You don't even have to be into ASMR. If you're into paper, you get what I'm saying. It just feels and sounds so yummy. So these are the things we're going to make today. one of the things that I quite enjoy doing these days is stamping on napkins. And so what you'll need for this is some napkins. These are just, oh, they're from McDonald's. These are just natural napkins. So you'll need napkins. I think we can all track down some of that. Tissue paper works beautifully too, so I have some of that. Here's a fun colored napkin. Sort of colored napkin. Don't you just love it? Cheapskates. But that's alright. We'll make it work. We will make it work. Taking a piece of tape and getting that started. So it's easy to separate, because you don't want it super thick. So you want to separate it. That is not my idea either. I'm sure I got it from Pam at the Paper Outpost, and if I remember her saying she got it from Crafty Irina. You know, it's just generation after generation after generation we do this, and I think that's awesome. This secondary one, we can stamp the bejesus out of that and make that work. We can use that too. What else do I have in here? So this is the top layer, and just grabbed a couple pieces of my coffee dyed paper, and I just recently made some fun papers in some bright colors for a change. I just randomly picked 2 of those as well, and because I'm using those, I have these beautiful napkins, paper towels actually, that it was also 2-plied, and I separated those, so there's another layer. I think this is just 1 layer already. Yeah, that'll go with my pretty papers, and I'll use something like that with my vintagey papers. You know, matchy-matchy. We're back to color coordinating and matchy-matchy stuff. And what you'll also need, we'll come back to this in just a few minutes, are things to put in your sandwich. I have a thing for used dryer sheets. I use dryer sheets in almost all my laundry. And when I mean used, I mean when you toss them in the dryer and you take the laundry out, now they're done. They're all used, and they're a different texture than when they are brand new. I think I have some brand new ones in here. Just to, yeah, here's a brand new one. So you see how much thicker. You know, they just have a completely different feel. The fabric softener has been beat out of them, and so they're super thin, and they feel different. And of course, they smell stronger, but the used ones still smell so nice. So that's some of the things I'm going to use. Brand new fabric sheet and used fabric sheets. I am also going to use dye catchers, I think they're called. If you're washing a new red shirt or a shirt that bleeds, you throw this in with your wash, and it captures the dye so it doesn't ruin your other clothes. I have no idea how that works. Clearly it captured some pink. See how pink it is. But why wouldn't it go in all the clothes? Why would it just go here? That makes no sense to me. Mind bender. Anyway, so this is a used dye catcher. It feels totally different than these dryer sheets. I'm also going to use some fringe. I've seen Eva at Bohemian Crafting does beautiful things with this fringe, and of course this is just cut off the top of a steno pad notepad piece of paper, or the long side of a notebook piece of paper. I've been collecting it. I have different colors. oddly enough, different sizes. I have this great big stuff from a sketchbook. So I'm going to use that in my sandwich. I'm going to try some cheesecloth too in between. I'm going to open it up. And I might Mod Podge this on. Open up, please. And give it some texture. I might do some flat and some with texture and see. I've never really worked with this too much before, so that'll be all new to me. I'm quite looking forward to that. What else do I have in here too? I have this super thin, I don't know what came in it, but it's packaging, super thin plastic. I don't know. I'm gonna Mod Podge that down in my sandwich and see how that goes. Super fun project. So, put my sandwich stuff away. Another thing that I saw Robin do that I really liked was she took paper towel cores and toilet paper cores and she put different things around them. And it seems to me she even squashed them a little bit. So this one I took jute twine and just wrapped it. No, just wrapped and tied and wrapped and tied. And then some embroidery floss just to get different sizes and textures. And this one has just different sized rubber bands, heather and yan, all over the place. At the time, I didn't have any cores, any rolls or anything like that. What I did have handy, and this is how I roll, is I just grabbed whatever was close, which was a file folder, and I wound it up all, and I put a whole bunch of rubber bands around it, and I stuck that in my ink, and I used that as a stamp, and that's how I got this. And I love it. It looks hashtaggy, it looks grungy, it looks almost barbed wirey, it kind of looks bamboo-y, kind of looks like a birch tree. I can see all kinds of possibilities with it. And then I just added some of my favorite little glitter glue. I rearranged some of my drawers the other day and I didn't find anything. Yep, I put it right where it would be handy. Yes, I did. Right where I'll always find it. First place I looked, just missed it. I believe I got it at the Dollar Tree. Super cheap, but I just spattered that all over the place. And I quite like it. So I might play with that a little bit today too. So what I would do first is we're going to do some stamping on our top layer. I'm going to use archival, Ranger archival ink, permanent waterproof. So this isn't going to move when I put the Mod Podge on. The Distress Oxides are water soluble, so they will move, and that's okay. It's purple. I'm going to use it. I don't care if it moves or not. So I want to try the purple on here. And again, I've not tried these, so we'll just see how it works or doesn't. I may have to wet something. Let me get something wet here. Well, let me try. I know this works, so let me try. Oh, you know what? It's all coming back to me now. It wasn't stamping. You know, can I just say, I love the sound of this. I love how it's square, so and no matter how you put the lid on, it works and it fits. I love how several of these sound together. Everything about this design is fantastic. Tim Holtz, you rock. Except for that unfortunate reflections backwards stamp incident. Other than that, we're grand. It wasn't stamps, it was paint. She was rolling this stuff through. It's been a while since I watched the video, so humblest apologies. So I'm just getting out my cheap Dollar Tree 2 for $1. I understand they're $1.25 tree now. Back when it was a Dollar Tree, I got 2 cutting mats for $1. So my 50-cent cutting mat, I'm going to use that as a palette today. And I just randomly grabbed 4 colors of paint to play with. Hi, bud. Hi, butter. So I'm just going to take a little bit of black and water it down a tiny bit so that I'll have something to play with. Just got some stamps out, some of my favorites. We'll do some stamping here in a minute. Whenever I'm going to do any sort of painting, whether it's painting walls in my house or painting watercolor or painting with acrylic, I always take, and this is just a cheap brush that was in a kids pack in the kids section at Walmart. So it's not any great shakes, but what I'm doing off to the side here is spraying it with clear water and getting it wet. And making sure each bristle is wet. Just dabbing it in clear water before I do anything. I usually wipe off most of the water, especially if I'm painting my walls in my house. You don't want drippy, runny paint. That will help clean your brush later. And even though it's a cheap, crappy brush, you don't want to have to be buying cheap, crappy brushes every 5 minutes either. So now I got it good and wet, and I'm just dabbing off so it's not drippy wet, and I'm going to water down that black acrylic paint into something that resembles ink. And wipe the excess onto this rubber band thing, and I'm just going to roll that through and see what happens. I like the black against those bright, vibrant colors. And I'm just rolling it across. Some things make better colors than others, or designs, patterns than others. That's fine. It all works out in the end, eventually. And you kind of get to play a little bit until you get to know your new toy. Like I said, I've never played with this, so I don't know what it's going to do. And I don't care. All I want is some black marks on this bright napkin. And now I have it. Let's see. This one's nice and flat, so we'll see if that makes a different pattern. And I have way more control over it because it's smaller. I'm going to move this one just for now. I've already made a nice juicy mess. So this one I have a lot more control over because I can push it and roll it. I can stack it. I really like that. So tell you what, I'm going to go mark make on my top layers, my napkins and my tissue. I'm going to clean up the paint that I just spilled, and I will be back. So after my little paint mishap, I have regrouped. As promised, I've taken the top one of the layers of my sandwiches, all of my napkins and my tissue, and I just stamped them. They're all a little bit different. This was the one we started with my paper towel rolls wrapped with twine and embroidery floss and rubber bands. I call this the artful cleanup. I used this to mop up some of the mess that I made. I retired those. I did not use those afterward. I think they'll be better suited for jelly plate printing, perhaps, because they really weren't doing what I thought they would do on the napkins. So I put them in the jelly plate print kit, and we'll try them out another time. And if they don't work for that, well then, we might actually throw something away. What a concept. So I have all different kinds and colors. This one, these are, again, I think these are just McDonald's napkins. I've separated, so they're single ply. I think this is a Dollar Tree napkin. Single ply again. It's kind of cool. They're so thin that the ink went right through them. Just a plain white napkin. I just pulled out my favorite stamps and some ink pads. That's how I did the rest of them after the original Little Nightmare that we started with. I like to layer my stamps. If I do one in brown, I like to go over it with black or vice versa. I don't know why. I just think I like the layering. I like the layering of stamps. Stamping. This one I was part of the artful cleanup as well. It doesn't look like much right now, but I have every confidence that once we put everything together, they'll just shine. This was an extra piece that I did, and these I believe I had from before. So I'm going to stack these back up in the order that we're using them, because I've stacked my other layers, my backing layers, in the order that I want to use those as well. I picked out which papers I wanted to use with which napkins or top sheets. I also have a couple pieces of tissue that we're gonna use as top sheets. I did not stamp these because I wanted to keep, this is that Christmas with the teeny little flecks of glitter on. I don't know, this just makes me feel like I'm a 5-year-old kid again. This stuff just sends me. It's so fun. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So remember, we started with this basket of chaos. These are my dryer sheets, some pieces of tissue. This is a tiny piece of super, super skinny foam. Packing protection of some sort. I'm going to use that. And I also wanted to use just plain tissue paper. Just a piece of plain tissue paper in the sandwich. So I've got plain tissue paper. This is a color catcher, tiny thin foam. Use dryer sheets, new dryer sheets, cheesecloth, paper fringe. And I don't think I showed you this when we started. It's like paper Easter grass. It's just super, super thin paper and crimped, and I'm going to stick that in between 2 layers. And finally, just some cotton from a bottle of medicine. And see what we come up with. Those are our, if we're making Oreos, layer number 1, these are the cream, and the papers are layer number 2. That's what we're going to do. We're making paper cookies, is what I'm calling it. So we started with a basket of chaos. Let's see if we can make something wonderful out of it. Oh, who kicked over the gesso? Really? That was me. I did that. Don't do that anymore. Okay, all right. I've got my cheap Dollar Tree 2-for-1 cutting mats down. I've masking taped them together so I don't get Mod Podge on my good cutting craft mat, because who needs that? I'm going to take 1 layer. This is a coffee dyed piece of graph paper, and it's minus a chunk. It's minus a chunk. It's torn. This is one of the, I put a stencil on and sprayed coffee through it and layered. Super easy. I believe I learned that from Pam at the Paper Outpost on stenciling. If I can find it, I'll link it. Super fast, easy way to do it. This looks like another one too. It's got stencil things on it and spritz of coffee, so I think that's how those got to be made. So I'm just going to pick off the top of my list here. I'm going to try this tissue. It's just a straight up piece of tissue now. Do I want just one layer? I'm going to fold it up a little bit. And that'll make it easier to deal with. Now I only have one. So what I was doing before when I made our prototypes is, because Mod Podge isn't necessarily cheap. I mean, it's not the most expensive thing out there either, but I have homemade Mod Podge. There's a truckload of videos and recipes. If you ask Dr. Google, you'll just get all kinds. And there's different recipes that use different things. Sometimes you might not have talcum powder, so you can use cornstarch, or vice versa. So look up, if you haven't made yourself a little batch, by all means. Elmer's glue or Aleene's glue. This is a mix of Elmer's and Aleene's glue because I wanted something a little bit stronger and a little bit higher quality than Elmer's. And I wasn't using the Eileen's glue anymore. This used to be my go-to, not the turbo, just the regular tacky glue. This used to be my go-to glue until I discovered art glitter glue and Scotch Create. Now those are the ones that I use primarily. So I had a couple bottles of this that I wasn't using. So I figured that would make better Mod Podge than just straight up school glue. Elmer's, it's pretty cheap. It's mostly water. It's going to yellow and crack. So, but I am using the cheap stuff to get this to get the stuff to stick to the first layer. And then I'm going to switch. When I do the top coat, I'm going to top it with real Mod Podge. I like the matte, even though it does have a tiny bit of a sheen to it. That's my Mod Podge of choice. I'm going to use a junky brush. I use this brush for a lot of things, and as I said yesterday, what I'm going to do is make sure I'm going to squirt just a little bit of plain water on my mat and get my bristles wet. Right up as far as I can get. I want everything in there wet. When you squeeze it, there's water coming out. I just want that nice and wet. Why? Because it'll make my brush easier to clean later, and then I dab all the extra water off. So now it's just a nice damp brush, but it'll be way easier to clean later. That's especially important since we're using glue. You know, it's gonna junk up those bristles. Yep, it's junky, but I don't want to have to buy junky ones every 5 minutes, so I do protect those. Don't want my place wet, so you have to decide which side you want to see. This side seems to have more pattern and interest, so I'm going to keep this side, which means I'm going to glue. This will be inside and we won't see it. So I'm just going to paint on my homemade Mod Podge. There's that tear, and the tear is not going to matter because we're going to put 2 layers over it. It's going to be fine. Go right out to your edges best you can. That's why I put the cheap Dollar Tree cutting mats down, because it's messy, this. But that's okay. The end product is so cool. So cool. Yeah, I made quite a mess with the acrylic paint. That black acrylic, I don't know. I just had too much going on, I guess. Whoopsie. Got a nice layer over it. And I'm going to take just regular tissue. And lay it on there. Now this one's not going to be any great shakes because there's no patterns on this tissue. All it's going to do is give it extra texture. Now there's a whole dry patch right there. My ends are good. I'm just going around those edges. And I just, you know, it gets wet. Tissue's going to be delicate. And that's all right. Cutting off the excess to get it out of my way. So I got a great big dry patch there, so I'm just gonna wet it so that it's not a dry patch anymore. And it'll take a few seconds, but eventually the water in the homemade Mod Podge will wet that tissue and she'll lay down and behave herself. Okay. Wipe that up because I don't want glue all over the back of my pretty paper. Just try and put it where I had it. Second layer of Mod Podge. I'm just gonna give it a quick another layer. And for this one, I'm going to top it with another coffee dyed piece of paper. I'm just going to grab something at random here at my trusty little, this one's going to be avocado dye. I've got a nice layer on there. I'm just going to get this on here the best that I can. This one's torn too. Can I move it? Nope. Too late to move it. I'm off by about, a good 1/4 inch right here. Oh well. Oh well. Press it down around the edges. I got some loose spots, so I'm just gonna stick some Mod Podge down in there. If you're gonna do this, and it's so much fun, why wouldn't you? If you're gonna do this, make sure you have a place set up where you can let them dry. You'll have the back of it's going to be pretty dry, but the tops are all going to be wet. Because now I'm going to put, and you can do this in steps if you want. Since I have all this stuff out, and since I'm doing it right now, I'm going to go ahead and put all the layers on. But you can let each layer dry and then add your next layer. Or, like me, if you want, just go all hog or none, as my grandma would say, and do it all at once. It's going to take longer to dry, for sure. So I'm just putting Mod Podge over the top of this. Now, do you have to put this top layer of Mod Podge if you're just doing paper, a paper sandwich, 2 layers? You probably don't. If it's stuck down on the underneath, you probably don't have to do this top layer. But I just really like the feel of a Mod Podge page. So I am going to do it. Of course, it makes it more difficult to write on, if not impossible. But once this is all dry, you could go over it with a teensy little bit of either clear gesso or light white gesso and give it back some of its grit so that you can write on it if that's one thing that you want to do. So most important thing is to get those edges down. Because there's so much water in all of this product, your papers are going to wrinkle again, and that's part of the beauty of it, I think. Once this is all dry, imagine going over it with a distress ink. I don't know where I come up with, maybe I'm making stuff up, but anyway, go over it with one of your ink pads and just bring out some of that beautiful texture. So there's our first one. The tissue is just gonna, some of it will peel away. It's like because it's so wet, like a natural perforation. It's pretty awesome. Okay, next one. Do I want the blobs or do I want the flowers? This has ghost flowers. I like that better than the flowers, so I'm gonna cover up this side. Back into the cheap stuff. A nice thin layer. Get your edges real good. If you haven't yet, follow someone's coffee dyeing process and make yourself, I think, a ream of paper at Walmart's about $4. Get 1 or 2 of those. It goes fast. You'd be amazed. And just dye some papers. Do coffee dyeing. If you have food color, do that. If you have spray inks, do that. You can just spray them. You could put some watercolor in a spray bottle and mix it with lots of water and spray that. If you want to try soaking when you have old ink cartridges, drill a hole and soak the rest of the ink out of those. Kind of lots of different ways to get color to a page. And do that. That's one of the best things that I have done in my craft room is make ahead of time loads of papers that I can just, if I have a project going, I can just grab and use it. I always have stuff ready to go. It's been a great help in the craft room. So I have one of those die catchers, color catchers, and I'm just gonna slap it in the middle here. And why am I using a color catcher? Because it has a nice texture to it. I found 2. I thought I only had 1, and so I cut this one up. I was gonna do different things because it has different texture to it, and that's what this is all about, is texture to these pages. I have an extra piece here. It's too wide for that, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off and put that on that side. And then I have a little bit, I have this little piece left over, so I'm just folding it into a smaller bit. Now I have end pieces that I can just stick in here. Stick here on the end. Just again to give it some texture and some weight. Push it into your Mod Podge. Another layer of homemade Mod Podge, the cheap stuff. I don't know, if you're using good glue like Eileen's, perhaps it's no cheaper than the Mod Podge. I don't know, but I have it. I might as well use it, and I choose to use it in the less important spots of the project. This color catcher it's pretty thick and hardy, so it's taking a lot of brush strokes. I could never get away with this kind of stuff using the tissue. If you find a bubble and you can, get underneath it. So the first one I'm going to use in my napkins is this one, and I'm going to just get it on top. Now you can kind of wrinkle it on purpose if you want. I could have wadded it up and then put it on. Maybe I'll do that with the next one, because that next one's just pretty ugly already, so who cares? So for this layer, I'm gonna put the good stuff on top. Now I used my Distress ink and Distress oxide, as well as the black is waterproof, but the brown and the gray are Distress inks, and so they might move if you over brush these. They might. You can kind of see where the brown is bleeding. There's quite a bit of green and yellow in Vintage Photo. And sometimes when it gets wet, you can see that. But that's all right. And again, I'm really just trying to make sure my edges are down. If they're not, and later when they're dry and we check them out and I have lifty edges, well, then I'll just glue them down. Not a big deal. But I'm learning as I go. It's best to try to do this stuff right the first time. Gotta be a little ginger with it as you lift it up, because she's pretty wet. We have 3 layers of Mod Podge down there now, so it's gonna be kinda fragile. And I'm just pulling that excess off there so it's easier to deal with in my drying space. So this I'm gonna use next. And because I only have the one piece, I think I want to cut it into strips. Varying widths. And that way I can just put it heather and yan. And it's kind of crimped too. It has a bit of a bend in it. So that'll give it extra texture as well. Do I want just that? Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna just try to make this one little piece work. So instead of doing the whole thing this time, I'm just gonna put down some of the cheap stuff and get this stuff on the page. Now it's a wee bit plasticky, so I don't know how it's gonna stay. That's all right, it'll be glued between 2 pieces of paper. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. But if it does, oh well. More interactivity when you have to put the journal back together. Just one more layer of interactivity, that's fine, it's all good. It's very cold again today. So the reason I'm telling you this is not necessarily to give you a ridiculously lame weather update, but to explain why you'll probably hear my heater kick on and kick on and kick on. Yowza. And here's an odd thing. We're going out to the clubhouse to go swimming later. Who swims when it's 18 degrees, the wind chill's probably 6. Sure, let's go swimming. That sounds like a beautiful idea, doesn't it? Ugh. It'd be good to get out of the house. It's been weeks, I think, since I've left the house, so I think this is one of the most fun things about crafting is making something pretty cool out of nothing. making something organized and beautiful out of chaos. It's creativity is just a pure alchemy, you know, taking garbage, old dryer sheets, excess packaging, color catchers, those kinds of things, wrecked tissue paper, dyed pages, and turning them into beautiful papers. You know, if that's all you do, well, fine and dandy, that's all you do. But then to take those pretty pages and put them into a beautiful book, a beautiful journal, a beautiful project, maybe an art journal page, just pure alchemy, something out of nothing. It's a beautiful thing. Just one of the reasons we do what we do, right? So while I have you here, I'm going to insert a picture. I have a new, I should say, attention all sassy crafters. Attention all sassy crafters. There's a new item coming to, hopefully it'll be there by the time this video gets out, my Etsy store. I'll put a picture in here. I just think it's fabulous. We all know the girl likes beer and F-bombs and true crime. I designed a shirt. I just think this is so much fun. I do crafts. Yes, I do. I do crafts. I do a variety of crafts at that. What fun. Get yours today. Yes, indeed. Why not? Oh, I kind of wish I had one more. Well, let's make more. Here, I just tore it in half. I was saying, oh, I need something here. Well, looky there. Now I have something here. We'll put the rest of it over here. Now these, especially where there's so many moving parts, so you want to probably keep this three-dimensional kind of page together as a unit. Because every time you cut, you run the risk of it separating. Especially with these bulkier sandwich items. If it's just tissue or a different kind of paper or napkin, it might just be fine. It might just be fine. So I'm gonna so this one's probably gonna need more stamping or more something because it's homely. And that's fine, you know, that's part of the process. If you don't like it, just keep at it. Eventually, it'll be fine. But it may take a little bit. So, push it down on all the edges. See, my vintage photo is bleeding off of there. I don't know if you can see that. I might be off camera. I'm sorry. This one I'm gonna, oh, I gotta put the top coat on. Hello? Can't just put it out there. You gotta put the rest of it on there. All right. That just sends me. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard, which really does not bother me at all. That particular doesn't bother me at all. Stuff on my hands? Oh, yuck. So, why don't you start a craft thing? Why don't you start that? Sure, why not? I know, be a hairdresser. Where your fingers and hands are in color and perm solution and shampoo and mousse and hairspray and gel. That's a good idea, isn't it? Sure, let's do that. I know. What about detailing cars? Because there's no dirty hands there. Oh dear, sometimes I wonder about her choices. And way back when I started teaching college, there were still chalkboards. All that chalk on my fingers. Ugh. Oh well. Quite enjoyed all of it, actually. Despite the junk on my hands. And you'd think after all these years of doing all those things, I'd be used to it. It wouldn't bother me. Drives me nuts. In cleaning up this mess yesterday from when I spilled all the paint, in cleaning that up, I bet I washed my hands 12 times. And it's not like OCD, like I want to wash my hands all the time. It's just I can't stand the feel of it. Okay, so wash your hands. Okay, wash your hands again. Okay, wash your hands again. I want to try the cheesecloth. I cut this down to size. I cut 2 pieces. I have 2 that I'm going to use. I believe I got this at Walmart with my grocery order. I love that they'll go to Walmart and the shoppers will shop for you. Dark side, light side, dark side, light side. I'm gonna go with the dark side. Oh, there's the big surprise. I'm gonna put the junkie. I wish this was smell-o-vision because this basket of goodies, I've had this project lined up to do this for you for a couple of weeks, and I just kept adding dryer sheets to the basket, and now everything in this basket just smells so good, including my cheesecloth, which means hopefully maybe these pages will have that nice fresh laundry smell when they're done too. I don't know. We'll have to see. And I made this one bigger on purpose because I want to fold it in and have extra. I don't want it to just fit. I want there to be wrinkles and bubbles and texture and extra on purpose. Obviously, this project takes a truckload of Mod Podge, so by all means, make some if you can, so that you're not spending a fortune on Mod Podge. A couple years ago, I asked Santa for bulk containers of Mod Podge, and Santa Mom, as always, came through with flying colors, and I think I have a few years Mod Podge supply. This one, and I want that colored piece down the middle, so usually I put it off to the side so I get enough extra. I could have put it at least one way, but no, let's waste as much of it as we can. But we'll have lots of nice little... But I wanted that down the center, so I kind of had to do it that way. Put our top layer on. It'd be awesome if I knew where my corners were. There's one. So I know where to go for my edges. Mod Podge. It has such a good smell to it. It reminds me of crafting with Grandma. I don't remember Grandma using Mod Podge, but maybe it's something about the girls' club. I remember going to the girls' club and crafting there. Maybe it's that, but it reminds me of being a kid. All of this does. I think that's one of the most appealing parts of it, is it just playing with paper and glue and tearing stuff and gluing it down and ending up with something cool at the end. It's so fun. And so good for you. So good to take a mental break from whatever it is. Work, bills, home, money, relationship, whatever. It's just a nice, mindless getaway. Focus on something else for a little while. I think I got that pretty good. I got Mod Podge everywhere. This one I'm going to wait till it's dry to cut it.